Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. Hey, welcome back to Coach Soul. I'm Steve Hudgins, and I am here to just kind of talk briefly about who I am and the reason behind Coach Soul. I believe in Coach Soul as a platform for coaching, not as a mental professional to give you therapeutic advice, those type of things, because I need to abide by my ethics and rules. But I'm here to try to just give you some insight as to understanding, because oftentimes people are afraid of therapy. It hurts, been there, done that. I've had bad experience with therapists, etc. And so I've heard a lot of these sitting in my office, and I'm proud to say that I am happy with being able to help people with where they are and have a success rate in marriages and helping men to value themselves and finding their healthy masculinity and see their marriages flourish. One of the things that I'm working on, I'm a doctoral candidate through Liberty University through their program of community care counseling with an emphasis of family and marriage. One of the things that has interested me in this type of research is blended families, because I've been in a blended family, and yes, I am currently divorced. And you think, well, how come? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Health was the last one for me that kind of made some things wonky. There were some misunderstandings that occurred that took place there, and so there was an amicable divorce that took place. And so I am 7 years single, and you think, well, okay, what kind of expertise can you bring to the table? There's plenty. Simply because I know who I am, going through my own type of therapy, and then becoming a therapist myself, has given me such insight and expertise into understanding blended families. Currently, I'm finishing my research, looking at 10 people who have been divorced twice, because statistics say that 65% of second marriages end in divorce, and that's rather high. I am producing and writing a book about things that I wish I knew before getting into a blended family, to help people to help mitigate the losses of a second divorce. And when you think about blended families, it's already tough being in a nuclear family as it is, because of toxicity of childhood traumas and those type of things. And so in my book, I will discuss several key factors that has helped me to understand blended families and have such a high success rate in divorce recovery, helping marriages thrive when there's mistakes on both sides, infidelity within the marriage, and being able to work through those things. I have several couples now that I'm working with that are divorced twice. They're in the third marriage, second marriage, and it's also having some issues. And so we're talking about ways to mitigate that 65% to a lower level. And I believe that Coach Soul is a platform to become a better you. Not to say that anybody's worse, but I look at it that I'm always looking to be better than where I was. One of my slogans that I thought, being when I die, I want to on my epitaph that Steve came into this world and left it in a better place than he came in. And that's so true. It is about how do we become better? Can people change? People can change if you allow them to change. Oftentimes it's sad that some people have to accuse and blame. And that just tells me where that person's heart is that they're still stuck in their trauma and not working through what that trauma is for them. So when you think about blended families and the 65% high divorce rate, it's about learning how to reduce the divorce rate in blended families, because you have so many different factors. In one of the research studies and please forgive me because I can't cite the source as right now, but there are 34 to 35 different typologies. And that's probably the reason why research has had a difficult time in understanding what causes second divorces. First one, we can really look at different ways of how communication was broken down. Oftentimes couples will say, they come to me and say, well, communication's the issue. And I say, I agree to disagree. Because you got together, you got married due to communication. But during this time frame, childhood hurts came to surface, and now we are acting out on our childhood trauma. So we want to be heard. And that's what we want to do. We want to be heard. And so we yell, we have become reactive, and that shuts down our communication level, but we're still communicating, but it's not in a healthy way. It becomes toxic. One of the things that I do focus on is fear. Fear creeps into relationships, and that is the basis of how I do therapy and working with other couples and addressing fear. And I've had such high success rate that I'm happy to kind of do the therapy that I do to bring success and realizing where all this stems from and revitalizing the marriage. I am currently working with some blended families, and I'm seeing some success rates with them. Is it tough? It's tough. And that's what I'm writing a book that's coming out, 10 things that I wish I knew before getting into a blended family, to help people to mitigate the loss of a 65% divorce rate. At this time, I hired Torund Bryhn, who I did interview on my podcast for the 9/11, and she turned around and interviewed me on a podcast in regard to who am I, what do I do about blended families, what do I research. And I kind of want to take a moment and just share this clip with you so you can have an idea exactly what we're talking about. So be patient and kind of tune into this clip real quick.
Hi, Torund.
Hello, how are you?
All right, this is exciting.
Yes. All right, so I am New York Times interviewing you on blended family. You are a blended family expert, and I say, hi, Steve, how are you?
Doing very well, Torund. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, I'm really interested. I was so intrigued by your viewpoint of blended family and experience. Could you tell us a little bit about how do we define blended family in today's society?
That's an interesting question because going through my doctorate program, we had to define what family is. And family can be a single person with a child considered a family. You have different variety of different families. Military family is a family within a family. And so when you think about the aspect of a family, it's who we include. Sometimes our friends can be included as a family if we don't have immediate family. So blended family is where you have a bio family that divorced and they either cohabitate together or they get married to create another nucleus of a family, which we call a blended family.
And what makes blended family? Now, I would like to go into the nucleus family, not to make it so broad like you're talking about, but like if we hone in on the nucleus family versus the blended family and
Sure.
Some of the different components of those two. We know that it's a family that's brought together with divorce, but what I have understand from the literature that I've read about your expertise is that the blended family has different challenges, different opportunities than to a nucleus family. And I'd love for you to shed some light on that.
So when you think about a nucleus family, we typically, research has said that 3, 7, 14, 21 are some of the years that divorces happen in a nucleus family. 3 because it's the first child, 7 because it's the second child, 14 because that child is starting to graduate and things start kind of unraveling. 21 is the empty nest nester syndrome. What I have found is that in research, there is a research gap as to the reason why 65% of second marriages end in divorce, which is higher than the first one. And doing the research, there is none. They stopped in 1990s local states documenting research as to blended families. What I found is that there is 35 different typologies within blended families, which is my assumption that that's the reason why we're not understanding what causes that high 65% divorce rate. It continues to go higher the multiple times that you're divorced. And what I'm hoping to find is that it is a melting pot mix of step and blended family bio parents. And so you have children in the mix. And it just seems like with children in the mix, not to say that they're the issue, but when you have like 8 parents to one child, that's a lot. 8 parents mean bio parents, step parents, grandparents that all come into play. And so there's so much economics, financials, when you're paying child support, legal issues. Even in my own situation, when I divorced my children's mother, there was parental alienation syndrome, which led me to reach out to Governor Keating of Oklahoma, reaching out to various senators and congressmen to try to figure out how to...
Not right now, as a journalist, that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in learning about blended families. So
Sure.
you've given me the different composites of a blended family, but why? So you're saying that because a person has different identities in it, so like the father has these different identities, what is it? Why is it that a blended family has a higher divorce rate than a regular family? Give me three components to that.
Part of it is dealing with the children, because you have exes involved that tend to just overstep the boundaries. That's number 2 is boundaries.
Right.
A lot of people don't have clear set boundaries. And so instead of looking at the patriarchal, matriarchal families that we used to have, now it's being a web, is what we're calling the families today, is a webbing of a network of a system. And the third thing that I think that's happening is attachment. We view life according to how we attach ourselves through attachment. Oftentimes, some people can grow up in an anxious attachment disorder, which creates codependency. Oftentimes, if there is narcissistic tendencies and codependency, that creates a human magnet syndrome. And in blended families, it causes a demise because oftentimes some people will find therapy to help them to mature, emotionally intelligence mature, to such a point that it causes a split and a rift in the family. So it's either kid situation, I look at boundary issues, and then again, it's attachment. How do we attach ourselves? And sometimes we go too quickly in a relationship, which is called a relationship attachment model. It's getting to know someone, beginning to trust someone, then we can rely on them, and then we commit and touch. And if those are out of order, the relationship has a tendency to fail. And that's what I'm seeing in blended families. Oftentimes we go too quick, too fast. Children
Okay, I'm
start
going to interrupt you there. Too
Sure.
quick, too fast on what?
Jumping from one relationship into the other.
Right. So when you're getting a divorce, how long do you think someone should have of time before they go into a blended family?
At least 2.5 to 3 years.
So 2.5 to 3 years. So like in the Catholic Church, we have this thing where when I was engaged, we had 6 months of meeting with the priest, of talking through and getting ready for the relationship. Are there blended family courses to help people to prepare to be in a blended family?
Not that much. I do know there is one person in Focus of the Family who has clinical expertise. I have experience and
But practical guidelines. What I'm talking about is
correct.
because what I'm seeing is what you're basically telling me is that someone that's in a blended family, going into a blended family, you're basically making the recommendation, do not jump into a new relationship right away, right?
Correct.
You're giving me the next lesson is there should almost be like a roadmap or a course or a preparation for someone to enter into blended family because there are different dynamics that people don't realize.
That is the goal of my research. My doctorate research is the goal to expound upon the hermeneutics of why people divorce. Once we're able to find the reasons behind that, the next step for me is to create some curriculum, some research, some educational tools to help people going into blended families, because oftentimes that love, that dopamine, the serotonin, all of this oxytocin coming in at once blurs the sense of sensibility, so to speak. And so we need education, more education. And so the goal of this research is to help therapists, professionals in the field, to help them to educate how to help people prior to. But here's the problem. Divorce has set a negative tone. So we have the highest rate of single divorced people compared to marriages right now. And what's happening is a lot of people are starting to cohabitate. And the cohabitation is also creating blended families in that aspect. But
so it's basically the whole thing, what you're basically saying is entering into a relationship, going from divorce and entering to a new relationship. Because a lot of times men will right away jump into another relationship. I think they do that faster than women. Like that.
Correct.
That's the.
I mean, even a loss of a spouse, widowers tend to marry quickly within 2 years, is what research has said, that men get involved a lot quicker in relationships. But it's almost about equal, because women also get into another relationship, depending upon their attachment issues and if there's codependency involved.
Okay. All right. So if you are someone that's got divorced and you met someone in within 2 years, like, so you met someone in 2 years, and what advice would you give them? Would you say they should have a half a day to kind of prepare for it? Because we have something called Cana in the Catholic Church, which I really like. It's like you have like a retreat where you come together and you prepare yourself for marriage. So it's almost like what you're saying, that blended families should have their own kind of Cana of preparation to get ready to get married.
I agree. I mean, that's for anybody. I mean, there is premarital counseling for those who are just starting off. I'm doing some of that right now with some 2 or 3 couples that I have. But basically, yes. I mean, you think about the toxicity that comes from a first marriage, and we carry that along into the second marriage, that we don't unpack the baggage, so to speak, to really isolate what's there. We're not, it's more about pleasure. Then we start gravitating into the purpose of a relationship. And purpose of a relationship should be questions of, in a particular day, if you were stressed out, how would you handle the conflict or stress in your day?
Right.
We don't ask deep questions like that. It's almost like, well, how is your finances? What do you do in your finances? Sometimes we ask, sometimes we don't.
Right.
But these are critical conversations that we need to have. And my suggestion is also what I've learned from my own experience. You don't introduce your children to the other person until there is at least 8 months of dating, because about 8-9 months, the mask starts coming off. People cannot be congruent, and so they start revealing themselves a little bit more. So that's why I say wait to introduce the children, because children and exes also, that's the other thing. Oftentimes it's difficult when you're dating and you're trying to find out if this second marriage is going to work. Do we ask specific questions about how did you handle the ex? How did you handle your children? How do your
Yeah, and it's
children?
so easy to do a blame game, like, oh, my ex is this, and then you're not really thinking about what you're doing. So, but what you're really saying, if we're going to come to the close of this interview, if I understand it correctly, is that to prevent the 65% of divorce is for when you get a divorce and you know that you want to meet someone else. Can you date in that 2-year time frame? Or would you say that you take a sabbatical from dating? Like if you get divorced, you take a sabbatical for a year, a half a year. What would you recommend?
I recommend at least a sabbatical of getting to know who you are. In a first time marriage or any kind of marriage situation, it has shown that oftentimes women can lose their identity within the marriage and vice versa.
Right.
And so if we're not knowing who we are, if we're not loving and accepting who we are, how can we choose to love that other person?
Right. So the first thing is to take, doesn't mean the time frame is really dependent upon the person, but you're really saying take a sabbatical to detoxify yourself,
Yes.
get to know yourself, get your inner core ready so that you can start dating again.
Right,
Or
because
start
what I'm
dating again.
finding, well, there's fear. Everything is fear-based.
Right.
Oftentimes, women will jump into another relationship because of fear of being able to make sure financially they're able to make it. Oftentimes, the security that's there. I mean, there are some women that are resilient. That I've known. Some go through a nursing program and work through it and then find someone after they graduate from nursing school.
But men at the same time, because they say that
Yes.
most men jump into relationships right away. They're the ones that are most propensity to go right into the next relationship.
If men are not working on themselves,
Yeah.
there's the tendency to have the childhood hurts.
Right.
And so they become reactive in relationships. But yeah, they have the tendency. I mean, I've done it.
Right.
I jumped from one to another. Yeah, it was 2 years in between. But at the same time, I realized it was my anxious attachment disorder that I had growing up in the military.
Right.
That didn't establish a healthy foundation for me.
Right.
That's the reason why hindsight's 2020 that I recommend that you get to know yourself, understand who you are, create healthy, we say boundaries, but I like to say terms because terms is not movable. I like to use the word threshold because your threshold changes from day to day.
Right.
And
That's great.
thresholds tend to protect your identity, meaning that I'm not going to allow people to define who I am and operate to their label.
That's fine. So what we're basically saying is when you are divorced, you want to take a sabbatical to learn about yourself, detoxify yourself from those things. When you feel ready, you go and you can have dating, but then when you're actually going, and then you're going to not introduce this new guy, new woman into your relationship with kids for about 8 months. Because then you have really determined if this is the person that you're going to like. That's when you introduce the kids. And that's probably at the time you would recommend some kind of a premarital counseling, again, to understand each other's party if you're going to go into either a cohabitation or into a marriage, because cohabitation and marriage is pretty much the same thing. It's just as one has a contract and one does not. If I got that correct.
No, I totally agree with that because I've got couples now who are blended families. And when I asked them, how intimate did you get into your situation? They said either the first day or the first week or the first month.
Right.
And they're having to backtrack and relearning each other because they allow the physical to take over the mindset. And that's the reason why I say take that sabbatical, get to know who you are, create healthy sense of self before you get into another relationship.
Great.
Because dopamine is so easy to love potion number 9, so to speak.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you, Torund, for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you for watching that clip. And thank you, Torund, again, for interviewing me, helping me to come out with my information, the book, and the courage that I'm writing this book, hoping to be released by January of 2025 is the goal of releasing this book. And one of the things that I really want to be able to help with is that blended families are tough. And if you haven't been in one, please give these families some grace. Oftentimes boundaries become tainted and they're blurred, and there's a lot of misunderstanding. And oftentimes when I look at blended families, sometimes it's we jump right out of a relationship into another, and I'm guilty of that. I was a telecommunications engineer. I served in the military. I used to be a youth pastor a long time ago, and running multi-million-dollar businesses and back into telecom engineering, that I decided that the telecom engineering field was volatile, and decided, because of my first divorce and my activity with Governor Keating in Oklahoma and getting the law passed in 2001, with the equal access law for parents, due to the fact that I went through a parental alienation syndrome, and I saw many fathers getting raked over the coals. And so we developed a coalition, and the fathers spoke out about equality. Any parent should not have to fight for their child's rights. And I was very happy and pleased with the court system through the psychological evaluation that they were able to find me as a fit parent and gave me custody of my kids. But when you get into that situation, it becomes challenging for a single parent. And so oftentimes single parents, they want a helpmate too. And you jump into a relationship thinking this is the best, but you don't think about things about a blended family. And a lot of my blended family stuff comes on a faith-based situation, meaning that there's no judgment with me when I deal with people who are Christians or non-Christians. I just look at, we are created by the Creator, and Coach Soul is a platform to uplift, to encourage, to say you're not alone, and to provide this information. So I really appreciate the time that you've given to this podcast. If you have questions, reach out to Coach at coachedsoul.com, and that's Coach, C-O-A-C-H, at coachedsoul, and that's COACHEDSOUL.com. And we will try to have somebody to connect with you in regard to this podcast. And so holidays are approaching fast, so take care of that business. Enjoy family. I know it can be rough at times, but we can enjoy family. And until next time, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact a crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship or personal advice. Please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.